Good afternoon, everybody. So the afternoon is getting late, and I think I'm the last speaker, so I'll try to make it quick as well. Solvay, just to give you a background of who Solvay is a global chemical company. We're based out of Brussels, and we have about $10 billion of turnover producing chemical products all over the world. Obviously, we are a European company, so we are under the European ETS. We're a compliance company. Also in Korea, we have a couple of plants that's under compliance as well. So today, we have a few different missions within the Solvay group in terms of carbon, but I want to focus a little bit more on the chemical company's perspective on what we did and how we developed offset projects. And of course, even in Korea, we do have interest to continue to do that. And I just wanted to share a little bit of our take on how we look at the market today. Okay, so as I said, Solvay, through its European ETS participation, I think one of the key things, and this was repeated over and over again from different speakers, is the MRV ability. Now, you really need this. Everybody has to be serious about developing the MRV. Because that's the only way you would really know where you stand. And that's very, very important, even in developing offset projects. You need to know exactly where your abatement costs are in order to see whether any project makes sense in terms of investing outside of your business. And that's what Solvay focused very much internally through the ETS as well. But coming 2012, I think we deployed a global program to make sure that we understand our emissions and energy consumptions all over the world. And I think we moved from the European ETS compliance more into energy efficiency now in order to obtain our objectives of emission reduction. And once you know where your abatement cost falls down, you would be able to make these industrial decisions, such as deploying new technology, or investing in new energy efficiency equipment, and even think about operational arbitrage decisions like changing your boilers into different types of fuels. And then essentially, before you do that, before you know your cost, it's very, very difficult to make that decision. That's the point that I wanted to emphasize today. Of course, one of the easiest things as a decision was to invest in internal abatement projects. There are offset projects, and because we were part of the EU ETS, and also we had plants outside the jurisdiction of EU ETS, it was very clear to us that we could develop some of these internal abatement projects outside the scope of EU ETS as offset projects and use that in our compliance in EU ETS. But that's not all we did, and that's what I will try to elaborate here. So as a chemical company, of course, a new regime, a new compliance regime on emission reduction is a burden. It's a cost to your production. And you can take it very passively, thinking that it's a tax, thinking that you react to the changes of the legislation and comply on what you're required to do. But Solvay took a different approach. We decided to take this as an opportunity, and I think this is also a common topic that other speakers repeated throughout the day. And what we did was we've recognized that in order to develop our internal projects and external projects, we may fall up with a situation where we have excess of credits. And in order to deal with the excess of that credits, we needed to have a platform to trade them efficiently. That was very important to us. So in order to get into the development of offsets, there is some pre-investments to be made. And you're not really just, I think somebody just explained how complex offsets can be. And if you go back to 2004, 2005, when we first started all these CDM developments, it was very, very difficult because no one knew the future of the market, and all the methodologies and all the procedures were very, very new. It was a highly, highly risky business. But that's some of the early risk taking paid off at the end of the day. And I think that's what we need to do in Korea as well. There is some uncertainty for sure. There's still, the market still has to develop into the complete market that we want to be in. But we also, as participants of the ETS, have to move and start taking some risk in order to be the early mover and being able to reap off the maximum benefits that you can obtain out of these opportunities. And then that's what we did. We invested in methodology, so we developed our own methodologies for abatement. We invested, when market was uncertain, for sure. At that time, when we first invested in offsets, some of our managers said, why invest in something that's unreal? What is the future price of carbons anyway? But I think if I remember correctly, our assumption was maybe $1 or $2 offset market project, still worthwhile doing it because there's environmental benefits of doing it. At the end of the day, the European market, you saw the table today, was in average about 10 to 15 euros for the last 5 years before the crash. So it takes some risk taking for sure, and that's what we have to all think about as compliance participants in Korea. Not just say the market is not ready. I think it's more to see where potentially we can take the risk and look for opportunities. So Solvay, with its offsets, we went in and done our own internal plants first, of course, because we had a portfolio of adipic acid plants that emits N2O, which is a greenhouse gas that's regulated under the Kyoto Protocol as well. And that was, as I said, one of the easier decisions, because for us, even in France, a long time ago in 1998, we started developing voluntary emission reduction programs, not for compliance reasons, but for voluntary reasons to reduce our emissions. And then with that technology, we developed it a little bit more, and then we were able to implement in various countries different offsets. But we didn't stop there. As I said, we saw that as an opportunity. We knew we were going to get a hold on big credits. So we knew we needed to have a very efficient trading platform. And if we had that, we also knew that we could trade more volumes for different companies around the world. And then that's where we were able to get into the market, develop third-party CDM projects, and trade those credits in the market. What's important here is that without the EU ETS, probably that would have been very difficult, because even the Kyoto market was quite rigid. Of course, we sold a lot of credits to the Kyoto compliance players as well, but mostly the active trading happened in the EU ETS. And the liquidity that it provided, and all the different participants that were dealing in the EU ETS, enabled us to be able to hedge our position and make our investments and get the returns that we wanted in the end. So that's one thing that is very crucial when looking at an offset market. There has to be a market, a liquid market, to monetize these credits in the end. So this page I just put in just to give you a glimpse of what we do under the Kyoto Protocol. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects. Actually, there's one more small project in Onsan, Korea, which is an SF6 project. So in total, we have 6 projects coming from the CDM offset programs. And we produce, even today, about 16 million tons of CERs per year. But as I said, we didn't stop on the CDM, we didn't stop on the internal projects, and we went ahead and done about 60 over projects in China and other parts of the world. We also did one offset project in the California trading scheme as well. This was a Trona mine carbon capture project. So that was very recent, as I understand. I think it was only about a year and a half ago. So we still continue to invest and develop these CDM projects. Also, if you look at one of the nitric acid plants in Brazil, it was registered as CDM, but it didn't really generate enough profits to run the project. So these days, Scandinavian wealth funds or the World Bank are paying a premium to purchase these credits so that abatement continues rather than stop. So those are some of the things we still use as a effective way to monetize current credits. And I think that's the big challenge, that the offset project itself, because there's no international market, there's no incentive for people to continue abating to capture their return. And I think even in Korea, one of the challenges would be if there is no market price in the future, would the CDM projects continue to abate under the current regime? And then I think a lot of the companies probably, because most large CDM players are established businesses like us, would want to continue abate within the current system under the ETS. So it's very, very important, even for the Korean ETS offset players, to be able to create a market where the offsets are traded at reasonable prices. So Solvay, just to conclude, we've done our dues during the Kyoto Protocol, and we originally had a target to reach in 2015, but we early achieved our emission reduction targets in 2012. So we've set a new target in 2012 to reduce additional 10% of our emission by 2020. And surely our major offsets or internal abatement projects have concluded. We've almost implemented all of them. So now we're in a phase to get into energy efficiency. I think that's one area a lot of the Korean companies can look into as well. It's not per se offsets, but you can definitely benefit from two sides by doing energy efficiency. You reduce your energy cost itself, so that's a project in itself. But also you can reduce your emissions by achieving the energy reduction, energy efficiency. And for sure, I think one of the big things or the problems that I see in developing as an offset developer, this is not as a chemical company, but as an offset developer, is that it's very difficult to find good projects in Korea because it's a very developed industrial world, so everything is quite efficient. Most of the large-scale offset opportunities were exhausted during the CDM days. Everybody already invested in and are abating industrial gases. So that's going to be a challenge. So it has to come from maybe, there's some opportunities on the agricultural sector. I've learned today myself that rice industry can reduce a significant amount of greenhouse gases, and that may be something that Korea has to develop further. But industrially, I think that is the challenge. We don't really have a lot of projects to invest in big scale. But I think it's our job to continue to look for opportunities, and hopefully we can be able to create a more liquid offset market. Some recommendation, I think, as I said earlier, each company, compliance company, you really need to understand your marginal abatement cost. Without that, it's going to be very difficult to make a lot of decisions under the carbon regime. So that's very important. If you have internal abatement projects, I think that's easy. You have to go do it now. There's there's no clear signal on what the price is going to be, but there is some signal. So you have to base your decisions on that and take some risk. And I generally, these types of systems encourage and incentivize early movers. So I think that's one advice that I would give you. It's sometimes beneficial to take these risks early rather than later. Still, problem is with the liquid market. I mean, the ability to sell the credits is very important in an offset project, but that only comes by people buying credits. So people who are in need of credits, I think it's time to try to go out in the market and start making some of these trades. And then that will give a good signal on where the market will land, and that will make it easier for yourselves to make decisions on developing future projects under the ETS. So I will stop there. And any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.